Much. We just completed a meeting with the crisis management team's credible messengers. This was actually scheduled after young Catherine was shot in the head of a few blocks from here. And I promised on that night I was going to come back and sit down with the credible messengers and the crisis management teams. We're going to continue to expand. We're going to do this citywide. And I want to thank my congressman, Congressman Espiat, my borough president, Vanessa Gibson, and also my other electors here, newly elected Councilman Velez, and our State Senator Rivera as well. You know, we've been moving throughout the Bronx these last few days, from the day of Election Day on, and just the consistency of these electeds that are here. And I just want, my heart goes out to Officer Jason Rivera and Wilbert Moya and their entire family on this horrific incident. Sitting in a hospital last night with the police commissioner and other electeds who came out together to state that no matter what philosophical differences we have, the killers assaulted our officers. And this is a battle between the killers and New Yorkers. And we are not going to lose that battle, and we're not going to be divided by their violence. And in fact, it's going to unite us like never before to be persistent in fighting this battle that's in front of us. And Officer Dominic Libretti, Kisam Pennant, Keith Wagenhauser, also officers who were shot, 5 officers shot. And the underlying causes are really revealing. The one yesterday was a domestic incident. The one on Staten Island was a domestic incident. It keeps talking about the feeder of violence and what is causing this violence to take place in this city. And these men and women I met with earlier, they're on the front line of this crisis. And we know that this is a painful moment, but it's also a purposeful moment. How do we turn our pain into purpose? And when I was at Harlem Hospital this afternoon, speaking with the family and just letting them know we're praying for their son to get through this moment. He's fighting hard, he's holding on, and we want to be there for this family during this period of time. And I just want to tell all those on social media and other forms of communication, we should be conscious of prematurely sending out those correspondence. You know, to put out yesterday that both officers died, that was inaccurate information. And it traumatized that family even more. So we must be sensitive when it talks about shootings of this magnitude, not to send the wrong message out. And I said this last night, and I will continue to say, violence is not going to divide us. No one will. We're going to be united as a city. This is how we are going to get through this. And we've been fighting this fight for a long time. And next week, I'm going to continue to roll out some of the initiatives that we've talked about putting in place to zero in on those small number of people who are creating a large number of shootings. We need to be clear on that. There's a pocket of people in this city who have made the determination that they're going to be violent in our city. So we're going to move beyond the debate and the rhetoric and move to a place that we can identify and reconcile what are the feeders of this violence that we're seeing. Because many people often talk about bail reform, but there are other rivers that are feeding the sea of violence. And if we don't identify them correctly and put in place plans to remove them, we're never going to resolve this issue of violence. And it starts with Washington, D.C. Washington must step up. The congressman talks about it all the time. We have to get the Build Back Better bill passed. We need those resources. There are billions tied up in fighting street-level violence for the crisis management that's tied up in this bill. we know we're doing the right job on the ground. We're removing thousands of guns off the street, but there's an endless flow that continues to come through our city borders. And so our officers are doing their job. We can't continue to allow violent shooters to remain on the street, and we can't continue to have the overproliferation of guns that are coming in. And so I am committed, and I am encouraged by the president's acknowledgement when I met with him right after the primary, his acknowledgement that we need to collaborate with city, state, and federal entities the way we did during 9/11 to fight terrorism. We have to fight the crimes on our street. One gun on the street is a gun that's endangering our entire city, and we need to move to push through this problem. But I'm saying to New Yorkers, don't give up. Don't surrender to violence. Violence will surrender to us. And we're not going to live in the shadows of killers. We're not going to state that people who are killing innocent people are going to overshadow the good work that we're doing to this city. We're going to stay united, we're going to stay committed, and we're going to move our city to be a safe place to raise healthy children and families. I'll open to any questions, but I want to first have my colleagues that are here, that are doing things on different levels of government, to have a word, and then I will open to your questions. Congressman?
Thank you, Mayor. I said yesterday and I say today that this neighborhood perhaps hasn't seen a mayor step into it in decades. I mean, I don't know, I'll look back, but I know that this neighborhood is in high need of help. And the mayor was here yesterday and he's here today. And I was with him last night at Harlem Hospital. He's only been in office just a few weeks. And, you know, this has been like a perfect storm. So we're going to get through this together, and we want to thank the mayor for his interest in speaking to this community. Now, I know that many will say, well, what about action? Well, I know for a fact that in a few days you will see an action plan from the mayor that addresses this violence that's impacting our whole city. And action also must come from Washington. The Build Back Better program has $5 billion for violence intervention. We have a anti-gun package, which I have the ghost guns bill, that right now is a new form of violence, right? These ghost guns that get to people's hands without any background check. They get assembled at home, but they're 9mm that could kill. And by the way, last night, my understanding is that that weapon that was used had a magazine with extra numbers of bullets, very dangerous stuff. And the mayor, we believe that he's going to bring us together. He's going to bring this city together into action. And I'm going to be right there next to him. Thank you. Keep the faith.
Good afternoon. I'm Borough President Vanessa Gibson, and I want to thank Mayor Adams for coming to the Bronx once again. In the past 3 weeks of both his administration and my administration, I've seen the mayor so many times in the Bronx, more than I ever imagined. But his presence, his participation, and most importantly, his partnerships demonstrates that this is a administration of a new beginning, of a new chapter. This is a defining moment for us in this city. As we continue to talk about our priorities, we have to make sure that public safety is the #1 issue that we are focused on every single day. And to all my colleagues who stand with me, and really all of our partners, we just convened a meeting with all of our anti-gun violence organizations that are on the ground, a part of the crisis management system, doing God's work every single day, keeping young people safe, giving them an opportunity, becoming mentors, helping so many young people on the pathway to success. They need our support, and they are a part of the solution and not the problem. They are a part of reimagining public safety here in the Bronx and in the city of New York. And so as we talk about priorities, as we talk about reimagining what public safety is, we know we have to include the men and women of the NYPD, but we also have to include the crisis management system and clergy and faith leaders and so many other stakeholders and partners who have truly been doing this work on the ground. And so as the borough president, I look forward to working with Mayor Adams and his team as we create these partnerships and investments that will make a difference. We cannot, and we will not live in a borough of the Bronx, in a city of New York, in which violence determines our quality of life. We will not lose our young people to mass incarceration and the proliferation of guns. It is not acceptable. When children are shot in car seats, we have a problem. When children are shot dead in the street by other young people, we have a problem. And so we are going to be about getting this work done. We are going to be about partnership, collaboration, and investment, because at the end of the day, every New Yorker has a fundamental right to be safe in our city, and we will not stop until we achieve that goal.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm State Senator Gustavo Rivera from the 33rd District. Mayor, I want to thank you on a lighter note. Whenever I can walk from my home to wherever I need to go to, it's always good, regardless of how cold it is. But in all seriousness, I thank you for your presence here, sir, and I thank you for the words and the discussions that happened in that room. As the borough president said, we had some of the folks who do the work on the ground, the violence interrupters, who know so well how all the work that it takes to actually make sure that violence like this does not occur. When it does, they respond to it. And the conversations that we had in the room are about how do we actually bring more resources to these organizations so that they can do good work and keep violence from continuing to occur. And we had some deep discussions about how we actually do with this in the long term. And I'm very thankful that the mayor, just 3 weeks into his term, is already having these types of conversations. So I thank him for his presence, and I thank him for his commitments in that room and the continuing work that we will all do to make sure that our communities are safe. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Councilmember Oswald Feliz, and I want to thank our mayor for, from day one, making it very clear that public safety is his #1 priority. To the people of the city of New York, we hear your cry for safe streets. You've been loud and clear that public safety is a problem that you want government to resolve. 3 days ago, an 11-month-old shot in the face. 2 days ago, me driving through Fordham Road, and I see a cab driver stabbed on Jerome Avenue. 1 day ago, 2 police officers shot, 1 killed. We hear your cry for public safety, and we, government officials, will not rest until we build a system that does not allow anyone to threaten your public safety. No one should have to worry about whether their child will make it back home when they're going to the grocery store, or when they're going to school, or when they're parking their car. As council member, that is going to be my #1 priority, and we will not rest until we build that system that doesn't allow anyone to threaten the public safety of any New Yorker. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I want to open the questions, but I want to say the best anti-violence initiative is having principals like this. This is Principal Day, this is her school. You could just feel the cleanliness, the energy, and you were a graduate from this school.
Yep, 20 years ago. Yep.
So it's about creating a holistic approach to dealing with violence.
Thank you. Mayor, I have 2 questions, if you allow. First is, can you give us a bit of an update on Officer Morales' intrinsic condition and how he's doing, as well as the dispute that led up to this?
The officer's still fighting for his life. His family is there. I met with them this afternoon at Harlem Hospital. And so at this moment, it's about prayers. We need New Yorkers to pray for the well-being of this officer that we should all be proud of. And also the officers that responded, and I remember standing as the officer came out, and 2 of his partners were hugging each other and saying, we tried. So this is traumatic. And so, the medical diagnosis, I think we should leave it up to the doctors, but, he's fighting for his life right now.
I just want a second question. You've had one, like what's your plan for that? If you have any action items from these meetings, and whether you've talked to any of the lawmakers standing in the way of the Build Back Better Act and that money for violence and prevention.
Well, that's my Build Back Better guy. But that is an amazing question, and why it's so important to sit down in these conversations. Think about this for a moment that I learned today. Every time I have these meetings, I learn something new. When we think of gun violence, we don't think of DSNY. One of the participants today explained to us that people who are selling drugs and hiding guns, they hide it behind garbage bags. And when you allow the garbage to stay on the street, they have a lot of stash places. And if my Department of Sanitation is not listening to the crisis management team on the ground and say, hey, I need you to pick up this garbage, then they are actually in the way of what they're doing on the ground. What I'm sharing to my crisis management teams, their power lies in city agencies. And so we are going to have meetings with my crisis management teams throughout the city, and they're going to do something revolutionary. They're going to meet the commissioners. And the commissioners are going to get the marching orders from me. Every agency in this city will have a liaison for the crisis management team. So the crisis management team and the credible messengers will no longer have to navigate the bureaucracy. Let that person in the agency navigate the bureaucracy. My crisis management team should be dealing with the crises, not dealing with the crises of navigating government. So we're going to change the dynamics to these are our Marines. And the Marines should not be waiting for the supplies to come in. They shouldn't have to worry about getting the resources they need. We're going to change the dynamic with all of our agencies, HBD, DOE, NYPD, FDNY. They're going to have a different relationship with my crisis management team.
Mayor, two quick questions. Mr. Mayor, I'm wondering if you can clarify exactly what precipitated the phone call about suspect's mother. What kind of argument was that? What's the call?
The detectives that's conducting the investigation, they will come out with a thorough report on exactly what happened based on the 911 tape. The mother was not really specific. She just stated that she was ill. Her son was coming up to take care of her, and he became problematic. She didn't drill into the specificity of being problematic on the 9/11 tapes, but I'm sure the detectives are doing a thorough investigation and interview to determine what led exactly to it.
And also, I'm wondering, Mr. Mayor, if you can tell us whether or not you've been able to trace the gun, find out how exactly he got it.
That's a great question. We know that it was reported stolen. There are cases, I don't know if in this case we're dealing with it, but there are those in cases where they report their guns stolen and they sell them. We have some horrific laws in parts of this country where you don't even have to report your gun stolen. That's a real federal change that we can make. In addition to that, imagine that you have to register your car every year, yet you don't have to register that you still have your gun every year. So we need to look at how do we go about identifying those guns and the guns problems of being out on our street. The Build Back Better, you wanted to talk, there was a question about Build Back Better.
As you know, the Build Back Better is a $1.7 trillion initiative that has, for example, $35 billion for NYCHA. Now, NYCHA is in high need of capital investment. You may say, well, what does that have to do with public safety? I think a lot, because if you don't have working elevators, you're going to have issues. If it's cold and the boiler is not working, you're going to have issues. And if the quality of life is really poor, then that's going to contribute to a bunch of other things. In addition to that, it has $5 billion for violence intervention. Now, we met with a group of violence intervention specialists from this neighborhood that can prove to us how their work in a particular zip code has contributed to the reduction, the dramatic reduction of violent crimes. So they are part of the formula. It's not just cops on the street, and I'm a supporter of that. It's also how do we work with the community and their school and the violence intervention specialists to make it happen. But they need the dollars. And right now, Build Back Better is being hijacked by politics, by partisan politics. And so we need to go back and fight to have that money released and adopted into law and come into these neighborhoods as quickly as possible.
Mayor, you said you're looking for a partnership with the legislature. You said it's not necessarily bail reform, but what sort of solutions are you looking from the legislature? And Senator Rivera as well. There's a bill that was passed last year, the gun manufacturing bill, that would keep gun manufacturers responsible. Is this something that can be applied in this case?
And I like that question as well. So what we have identified and what we have been doing for the last 3 weeks is, as I said, there is a sea of violence, and seas, they are filled by rivers that flow into them. We have to put dams on all of these rivers. And those rivers we're going to lay out comprehensively in a speech that we're going to do. I met with my team this morning that we're putting the final touches so people could explain and understand in a real way what's feeding this violence on the federal level, on the state level, what we need to tweak, and what I believe had good intentions, some of the legislation that we have witnessed, but we need to re-examine and tweak it, not change it, but there's just certain places we need to tweak to get it the results that we're all looking for. And then we need to look at our DAs and share with our DAs, here's what we're doing that's increasing this violence. And something that's often overlooked, our court system. What is the role of the court system and what is it playing in allowing shooters to stay on the street too long? And then what we are going to do as police officers in the police department. So we are going to lay out what is the blueprint for safety and show how we got here. Because that's the question we have to answer. How did we get here? And we're going to lay that blueprint out, and this will give everyone the marching orders that we're moving in the same direction to end this violence that we're seeing. Because if the police just take thousands of guns off the street and we are putting dangerous criminals on the street, or we're not addressing the flow of guns, then we're wasting our time. So we need a concerted, organized effort, and you're going to see how we're going to accomplish that when we give my overall blueprint for safety. And I like that name. Hold on, we got you. I'm gonna get you. Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, sorry.
So I believe that you're referring to Senator Myri's bill, which would hold gun manufacturers accountable, much like we hold basically anybody else who makes any type. If you buy something at your house and you get electrocuted from it, then you can actually hold the manufacturer accountable. That's a bill that I support. But everything that we do in the conference, in the Democratic conference in the Senate, is something that we discuss as a conference. I can assure you that we care deeply about all of these issues, about how we resolve gun safety, how we hold manufacturers accountable in this particular sense, is something that we would be discussing as a conference to see if we would move it. But certainly, I'll make sure if my name is not on the bill already, I believe it is, but I'll be talking to Senator Myrie about moving that bill pretty soon. Thank you.
Mayor, these officers were ambushed basically by someone holding an illegal firearm. New York has some of the most restrictive laws in the entire country. Our data analysis shows that many of these guns are coming from the south along the I-95 corridor. They're not purchased here in New York. What do we do about that?
And that is what our conversation has been with the president. Just as there are a small number of shooters, there's a small number of shooters in the city. There are a small number of gun dealers that are providing these guns in different ways. We need to close those loopholes, and we have not. And that's the help we need from the federal government. We're going to do our job. It is shown. The numbers are clear. Officers are taking thousands of guns off the streets, but they need help. And the help is to stop the flow. And that is what the federal government must do, and Congressman and the New York delegation, the Chicago delegation, Detroit delegation, all of these communities where there's witnessing the overproliferation of guns are mobilizing now to get the state, the federal, and city agencies together, ATF, FBI. We're meeting here in the city every morning at 10 a.m. with a collaboration of law enforcement agencies. I talked about it on the campaign trail. The former administration introduced my idea in August. That is in place. It's extremely impressive what's happening. this is going to be the model across the country on how we deal with this gun violence that we're seeing. Yes, you can. Yes, hold on.
Yeah, let me just say something about that because I know that it's the purview of the federal government. First, law enforcement could develop a strategy to include local police, state police, federal agents to try to stop that pathway of powder that shows up in neighborhoods like this. Second, we usually hear of the gun violence when there is a tragic, very tragic incident with a semi-automatic, weapon somewhere. But very often we don't hear of the handgun. That's right. Because the handgun is the one that shows up in our neighborhoods every week. Every week is the handgun. And so we must be laser focused, not just in one of those semi-automatic weapons, but also on the proliferation of handguns. And finally, there is a whole, and to tell you, just give you a snapshot of what's going on in Congress, there are members of Congress that want to come into chambers packing their guns. So, I just need to let you know what's the environment out there, right? And so, finally, there's a package of legislation that seeks to have stronger background checks to hold the gun manufacturing business and the people that sell the guns in the shows, right, where there's very little oversight and accountability, held them more responsible. So this is a fight at all levels, and we understand that the federal government must play a pivotal role in this.
So, Mr. Mayor,
yes.
Public safety was on the minds of most New Yorkers last year when they elected you mayor. You say you're going to roll out some initiatives in the coming weeks.
Yes.
But how long until New Yorkers see any result? Is it going to take months? Is it going to take years?
Well, listen, I'm hoping to take days if possible. Listen, the one thing I can commit to New York is no one is going to work harder, no one is going to give more of themselves than I am as the mayor of this city. I am personally responsible for the safety of New Yorkers. And we had to get into an agency, we had to analyze, there was data, there was information that we didn't have privy to. We're 3 weeks into our administration. We have been working 7 days a week to make sure that when we roll out something, that it is thoughtful and it's not just a knee-jerk reaction and it's just not a feel-good measure. And so my hope is we can start day one to make sure we see safety in our subway system, safety on our streets, and safety with the violence that we're seeing. We believe that when we roll out our initiative, we're going to start to see a real impact in violence and create a safe environment. And I cannot predict what's going to happen. The only thing I can predict is that I am going to work harder than anyone that has ever sat in this seat to make my city safe and make our city safe.
Last question. Mayor, you've only been mayor, you've been sworn in for less than a month, and this is probably more time than you would expect to take place in such a short amount of time. How has this been for you, and why do you think this is all happening at this time?
Why do I think?
Why do you think this has all been happening in such a short amount of time?
Well, I think there's a combination. The trauma of COVID did a number on us. We see increase in suicides, attempted suicide, young people. I stop at my clinics and they're saying, Eric, children are coming in younger and younger of the trauma, the employment, the stress of not sure you're going to keep your home, the easy flow of guns, the ghost gun. Ghost gun is a real crisis that we're facing. To be able to mail in guns that are not put together, they unassemble, this is going to be a real crisis we don't get a grip on, and we need help. I think that there's just a perfect storm that we are facing right now. But I also think with that perfect storm, I'm a perfect candidate for this moment. I'm the right person for this moment. The balance between public safety and justice, my life work is bringing me to this moment. And having a person that understands the totality of why we need public protection, but why we also need to make sure we don't go backwards, where we are heavy-handed in policing, something that I fought against. I fought against both these narratives, and I think that no matter how challenging the moment is, I am not tired, I'm not daunted. I know what we're capable of, and I'm going to move this city forward together by creating these partnerships. You know, we don't have to agree on everything, but we must agree that we must be safe. And that is what we're moving towards. So I'm prepared for this moment. One of the officers in the hospital said yesterday when I was walking past him, he grabbed my arm and he says, I'm just so happy you are our mayor right now. And that means a lot to me because they know I'm going to have their backs and I'm going to have the backs of the people of the city. Thank you very much. Wait, you know, you know, that's a good question because this moment right now, with every day we're dealing with crises. Little did I know that taking up meditation and breathing exercises and green smoothies and making sure I exercise in the morning and taking the downtime. Little did I know all of that is going to allow me to maintain this equilibrium. You know, and when I sat in the hospital yesterday and I got in the corner and I just meditated on this family and I did breathing exercises to bring down that anxiety. You know, I'm no good to New Yorkers if I'm not good to myself. And I encourage all of us as we're going through this moment of stress and strife. This is a moment, as I'm sure Principal Day would tell you, this is a moment to teach our children self-care. This is a moment to teach each other self-care. You know, people, you know, sort of giggle when I say emotional intelligence, but this is our moment. I have to identify my emotions and identify the emotions of others through this traumatic period. When we walked to the precinct today, people were stopping on the street and they were saying how much they were in pain. They were hurting for these officers. And I must teach New Yorkers how to do self-care the way I've learned to. And it has helped me throughout all of these tragedies that we have faced these last few days. And I am able to be good to people who are in pain if I am able to handle the pain that I'm experiencing.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, Mayor.
That's a good deal.
All right, where you guys are.